Fabulous PhillyCAM for having us here. We want to shout out Laura Deutsch, Sergio Galliano, Luis Lehman, and Gretchen Clausing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So what is first person arts? Now, if you're not hip, you don't know who we are. If you're hip, you know who first person arts is. So first person arts, we're a local not-for-profit. We're about 18 years old now. And we believe that everybody has a story to tell. And when you share your story, you connect with each other in the world. I mean, just because you have 1,000 friends on Facebook doesn't mean you have 1,000 friends. And it certainly doesn't mean that they know who you are. But when you have a safe, nurturing environment to talk about your experiences, you connect with each other. And we've seen it. We've heard thousands and thousands of stories from people in Philadelphia just like you and throughout the world. And we have found that there is more that we have in common than that differentiates us. And that when you share your story, you find that out. So one of our major programs is the annual First Person Arts Festival, which is in its 17th year. It's coming up November, from November 4th to the 17th, and we are bringing to life venues throughout the city with the power of stories, and we are unleashing those voices on you. So we are hoping that the First Person Arts Festival will bring more life into Philadelphia and build community. We also do some other things. You may have heard about our monthly story slams at Fringe Arts. Now, those are evenings when we have a theme. You come in, anybody in the audience, you sign up to tell a personal story on a theme. The upcoming theme is alter ego. I don't know about you, but I have an alter ego. And you can share your story on that theme at the Story Slam event. We also have something called applied storytelling. Now, that's the kind of work we do that everybody doesn't see. It's work we've done with kids from the foster care system that are transitioning into independent living. We've worked with all kind of community-based organizations, from museums to mental health agencies, using the vehicle of storytelling to bring people together. In addition to that, you might check us out on Common Space. acommonspace.org is a radio show that we've done in collaboration with WHYY in Philadelphia. And with Common Space, we try to connect true personal stories to current events, to kind of open up the door so that everybody can be part of the conversation. In terms of our festival, we have started it in 2001, and since then, we have had the pleasure of featuring people like Toni Morrison, Janine Garofalo, Mike Daisy, Chef Marcus Samuelson, and so many other people. It's been a real experience for us, and it's unique to Philadelphia. In fact, it's the only festival of its kind in the world that only features true personal stories from celebrities and everyday people. So November 4th through the 17th will be the annual First Person Arts Festival. Now, part of the festival I'm really excited about are workshops. We're going to have 4 workshops during the festival this year. The first one is called the Slam Camp. So have you ever wanted to share your story but just didn't have that confidence that you needed, or maybe wanted to work with somebody on your story before you told it? Well, Namisha Ladva, who is a multi-storytelling winner, she's won awards over and over again, she's going to be teaching a Slam Camp. So all you beginners, or even you experienced storytellers that just want a refresher course, the Slam Camp is that kind of experience for people. We also have Podcasting 101. That would be Otis Gray is going to be talking to us about how to start your own podcast. I've been thinking a lot about doing it myself, but I just don't know how to go about it. Well, Otis is going to tell us his secrets to how you start a podcast, the mistakes that he's made through his career. Otis has a podcast called Hungry, which is around food and storytelling, and it's really, really cool. So Otis is going to come in and help us learn from the mistakes that he's made and make our own podcasts. Now, we also have a a new workshop on online dating. So, I mean, there are like millions of users on online dating websites. How do you get your profile and your personal story to shine above everybody else's? And most importantly, to really find love. So Dr. Marquita Williams, who's a psychotherapist and psychologist in the city of Philadelphia, is going to be leading a workshop on how to write your online dating story. I think the workshop that is most near and dear to my heart is a workshop that we're conducting called Gender Identity for Families. And we have with us today the host of that workshop, and I'd like to bring her on for all of you to meet. Ladies and gentlemen, Nikki DeCaro.
Hello, sister.
Hello.
So good to see you.
So good to see you. So, Nikki, I think you are the perfect person to lead a workshop called Gender Identity for Families. You've had a personal experience with gender identity issues. Would you tell us about it?
Sure. My experience started probably 30 years ago when I realized that I was different, and I don't know why I was different. I didn't know why then. I was wondering, what am I going to do with my life? Why am I here? Am I here to work every day, raise kids, and then eventually retire and turn to dust? Or am I going to leave a legacy behind? So I started with writing. I wrote a lot of books. I'm up to 27.
Wow.
We can talk about that later. But when I turned 55, I realized it was time to do something about this inner woman that really wanted to come out and express herself. The facade was getting heavy. I was having a hard time carrying it. And I finally met people who were like me. I thought I was the only one in the world. So I came out 5 years ago for the first time. And then 2 years after that, I decided it was time to be in public and to live authentically. So January 1st, 2016, I went from my former self to my current true self, Nikki DeCaro, and I've been living authentically and absolutely openly and wonderfully for the last almost 3 years now.
And you are one of the most beautiful, elegant people that I've ever met. And your authenticity really shines through. And we are so glad that you're going to be teaching this workshop. So tell me, what can people expect to get during your workshop?
They can expect to get engaged. What's very important to me is dialogue. I'm more of a facilitator than I am a teacher, and I'm here to learn from people, not only try to teach people. So I'll fill in the blanks. I'll draw out the audience, ask the audience questions, probing questions, and part of the process is for me to understand what they know and what they don't. And with my expertise, I hope to fill in blanks and have people walk away with a better education. Also, I want to make this dynamic. There will be families there. I want children and parents to be able to communicate. I want to be able to help them understand, to see life through the child's eyes and have the child see the struggles the parents are going through. So I think that's going to be important for the cohesion that's going to come out of this. And I want people to walk away knowing that I'm a resource for them. And if they need counseling, I can point them in the right direction. If they just want to talk, I'm happy to spend time with them. And I want to also tell them there are resources they can garner, they can use, that will help them to be much better at being parents and growing up to be productive children and adults.
Nikki, what do you think is the biggest challenge right now for a young person exploring their gender identity?
That's a difficult question because there are lots of challenges. One of the biggest challenges is for people to understand that it's all right to be unconventional. I don't call it different, I call it unconventional. Conventional is so yesterday, so last year, so last century. You define yourself every day. Look around. There's nobody in this room is a carbon copy of anybody else. So diversity exists everywhere. So what's so wrong about me wanting to be who I am if it makes me a better person? And that's a challenge for young people because young people don't have resources. Look, there are 4,000 transgender students, kids, living on the street in Philadelphia. They call it couch surfing, which makes it sound like it's not a big deal, but it really is. There are parents who are putting their kids through conversion therapy, thinking that conversion therapy is going to make these kids forget about this lifestyle. And the biggest challenge is parents think this is a phase and kids will grow out of it. This is something that's baked into a child's DNA. It was baked into my DNA. If you look around and you look at the children who have transitioned and see how happy they are, how successful they are, you realize this is something you have to embrace.
How can parents of a child that is experimenting, or not experimenting, but exploring and discovering their true gender identity, how can they take advantage of your workshop?
They can come and they can learn. They can share their experiences. They can meet other parents who are going through the same challenges. And they can also take away resources. The PFLAG organizations in the community that are available to them, therapists, then there are parents groups that are available as well. They can also rely on me to answer questions for them and tell them honestly how I think they're doing in terms of being a parent.
Nikki, you're also an author. Can you tell us about your body of work?
Sure. I've written a number of nonfiction pieces. I've written 5 pieces on gender transition for the employer, for the family, for the transgender, and for the educators. I've also written a piece called Greater Than Transgender. I've tried to debunk a lot of the myths that are in the marketplace about transgender isn't really anything you should worry about. This is not something that we should embrace. I've also started my memoirs. My first one's called Transcendence. That's the series. And the first one is My Rebirth as a Woman. The second one, which will be published shortly, is called Turning Into Second Fiddle, where I've gone from being a high-powered male financial executive to being a low-powered female executive who has to wait for the guys to say it's okay for me to speak.
You know, that's an interesting point that you make. You've clearly seen both sides of the aisle, as it were, in corporate America. What are the conclusions that you can draw for sure about the difference between how women are treated and how males are treated in the workplace?
Well, it's still a boys' club. We need to have a girls' club. We need to have a concerted girls' club.
Yes.
And realize that if you look at the numbers, women-run companies produce better financial results, they produce more innovation, and they produce more productive employees.
Wow, love to hear that. So again, Nikki, can you tell us about the day and the time of your workshop, just so that people have that information?
Sure, it's November 4th, and I don't remember the time.
Okay, so it's November 4th. It'll be at Christchurch Neighborhood House in Philadelphia, and it will be a gathering place for families and young people to learn about gender identity.
What time do I need to be there?
2 o'clock, and I'll let you know for sure. Thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing this important information with us.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
We
Thank you.
really appreciate you and love you.
Love you too.
Thank you, Nikki DeCaro. Nikki is an amazing, amazing person, and I know that her workshop is going to touch a lot of people. So next up, we want to give you a little taste of first-person arts storytelling. So we have a clip from storyteller Nimisha Ladva. Now, Nimisha has won numerous storytelling awards from First Person Arts and from others. She's had a one-woman show on her experience as an immigrant, and she is a powerful voice to be heard. So let's go to Nikki's clip.
I grew up in England and went to a school where the minority population was as follows. There was a boy named Savas. He was olive-skinned and came from Cyprus. There was Anne-Marie. She looked exactly like everyone else, but she was Catholic. And then there was me, the dark-skinned vegetarian other who smelled a little bit like curry all the time. So life at this school was not very easy, and often the not easy came around food and feeling like I belonged or not. So for example, when I first moved to this new school, I make my first new friend and I have my first play date, and we're at the house and my mom says, snack time, and we come over, we go to the dining room for snack time, and what my mom has done has actually made a multi-course Indian meal for us. There is dal and cauliflower and saffron rice and mango lassi, and I'm so proud of my mom. Until Michelle Jones sees the food and screams, "Oh God, it's all yellow! It's yellow! I can't eat yellow food!" And we actually have to call her mother to airlift her and rescue her from our house. So then I need a new friend. And I make friends with another girl. Her name is Deborah. And she tells me one day at school that her mom actually has 100 million different kinds of cookies in her house. I think that's amazing. So we decide that after school one day, I'm going to go over and have tea, because that's what you do as a school child in England. And we get to her house, and I'm thinking, out of 100 million, in like 30 minutes, I could probably do 1,000 cookies. And I'm really excited. We get to the door, and Mrs. Parfit opens the door, and she takes one look at me, and she looks at her daughter, and she says, "She can't come in, dear." And she shuts the door on my 7-year-old face. Then, of course, there's lunchtime. Lunchtime with Vicky Lane. Now, Vicky Lane brought a tuna fish sandwich to school every single day, and that's her choice. It's a free country. The thing is, though, she also must, every time she has a tuna fish sandwich, open the corner and like pass it around the table for everyone to have a good sniff. And I'm vegetarian, and that's like really bothering me, but I never say anything. I always would bring a plain cheese sandwich to school, but one day my mom made homemade samosas, and I had to bring one to school, right? So I take a bite, one bite, and Vicky Lane of Stinky Fish Sandwich, she says, "Misha, that's horrible. It smells terrible. You're going to have to move." And do you know what I do? I move and I eat my lunch by myself. So you can imagine my shock and thrill when finally there is one day and one moment in the day when that whole food and belonging stuff comes together, not as a curse, but as a gift. We are in all school assembly. That means everyone, the whole school is together. And Mrs. Erskine, our head mistress, is talking about some life lesson. And in the middle of it, she says, like magic, she says, "And boys and girls, last night I had chutney for the first time, and it was delicious." And I'm thinking, chutney? I know what chutney is. Chutney is an Indian condiment. And I'm like, the next thing she says, like, "Does anyone know what chutney is?" I'm like, I know what chutney is. And I raise my hand, and I'm so excited, and I'm feeling special and chosen and fantastic. And it's like slow motion, really. She's the one hand that's up. Yes. And I'm thinking of the chutney my mum made the night before, and I said, "Mrs. Erskine, chutney is made from garlic and chili pepper and tomatoes." And Mrs. Erskine looks at me and she says, "No, it's made from mango and sugar." Mrs. Erskine doesn't know that you can get all sorts of chutneys, and she does not ask. In that moment, it was like I had a balloon of all my hope and eagerness and enthusiasm up above my head, and Mrs. Erskine took a goddamn harpoon and just like shot it down in front of everyone. And I have looked back on that moment for many years, and I have wondered, what happened? That was supposed to be my best performance. And you know what? Maybe it was. It was the first time I ever spoke up, proud of being Indian, proud of being an immigrant, proud of my own mother's cooking. Now, you won't be surprised when I tell you that my mom and dad got tired of living in England, and they came to the one place they thought immigrants were welcome. They came right here to America. And I have been worried about what that means given what's happened in the last 2 weeks. But I'm going to tell you that I think their choice is still the right choice, and I will tell you why. Because I now have a 7-year-old daughter, and she goes to school. And at her school, they ask me to donate an Indian meal as a prize for the school fair. My kids go to a school where there are 107 different cultures and countries represented. And we have Cultural Heritage Night every year. And this year, my husband says to our 7-year-old daughter, "It's a lot of countries you have." And she says, "Yes, Daddy," and they all like each other. So this is a good country. It's a great place for a taco truck, a curry truck, a halal truck, a soul food truck, a noodle truck, a pasta truck. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting your favorite truck, but I think you know where I'm going with this. I welcome the old Chevy truck that's selling good old hot dogs with lemonade, because we are staying and we are in this together, and that is what makes America great.
And America is great, and it all started right here, the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. So I've been talking to you about the First Person Arts Festival in Philadelphia, and how the festival is the only one of its kind in the world to just feature true personal stories from artists and everyday people. Well, last year at the festival, we introduced audiences to someone that many people already knew, but he made a lot of new friends last year. And I would like to bring him on and introduce him to PhillyCAM audiences and to talk about his show. Ladies and gentlemen, put it together for Kamar. So Kamar Jewel is the viral choreographer and genius behind the Excel Dance crew and their work. So last year you did a little something in the festival called Legendary, and people are still talking about it today. So I guess we named it appropriately. So Kamar, would you tell us a little bit about what Legendary is?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So basically, Legendary is a show that basically tells two sides of a story. The first story is about people, and they're all LGBTQ people of color, and there are also some people who are of trans experience as well, and they're basically coming up in the world, trying to find their place, and they find it in the ballroom scene. For those of you who do not know, the ballroom scene is like with the voguing and the runway and all the fabulous costumes and so many amazing things. But basically, these people are trying to become legendary or well-known, very well-respected in the ballroom scene, but also at the same time, they're trying to become legendary in their own lives and trying to tackle their own struggles, but trying to do both of them at the same time.
So there was a movie out, I think it was in the 80s, and it's really iconic now. And the movie was called Paris is Burning. And it talked a lot about the unique challenges faced by LGBTQ, especially males of color, living in New York at the time, and finding themselves marginalized by the community, but having so much energy and so much to give and so much love. And they found each other in New York in the ballroom scene. So I know you said the ballroom scene is about voguing, but it seemed to me that it was about more than that. It was about finding a place of your own, yes, a place where you could be who you always were deep inside. And so Kamar, you have created this show Legendary, and it is the true personal stories of a select group of males of color from the LGBTQ community. Can you tell us about their stories?
Sure. So with Legendary, we have 6 characters, and we basically followed them along their path as they become legendary in the ballroom scene, but also in their own real lives as well. So we have people who are dealing with things like gender identity, finding out that they're HIV positive, homelessness, dealing with masculinity and femininity, being a gang member but also still gay, dealing with coming out to your mother and being kicked out, dealing with homelessness, and also my story, which is dealing with depression.
And we had a sold-out house last year for Legendary. And after Legendary, it was so funny, we had a talk back with the audience. We almost closed the place. The audience was so excited by the performance and had so much to say that we're bringing Legendary back. But this year, it's going to be a little different. How is it going to be different for those people that may have seen it last year? What's going to be new about it?
So this year, Legendary is going to be bigger, better, everything. So we have a bigger venue. We have more space. We have a great lighting designer, a great sound designer. I'm giving you better choreography, better direction, better dancers. We might even have Beyonce come through.
So you have a little something that you prepared for us today. Just a little taste of Legendary for us. I'm going to take the microphone and let you go ahead and do your thing.
All right, so first I need to take off my shoes.
All right, take them off, baby.
These are expensive. And I'm messing these up.
Take off the shoes, baby. Go ahead and get down.
All right, guys.
I'm going to slide over here.
All right, guys. So today we're going to talk about the 5 elements of Vogue. And just before we get started, I want to let everyone know now, Madonna did not create Vogue. But let's kill that myth right now. Madonna did not create Vogue. Oh, need the mic? Let's use the mic. All right. In case you didn't hear me, Madonna did not create voguing. So we're going to dispel that myth right now. So basically, I'm going to show you 5 elements of voguing, and basically these elements are placed together to create a holistic story, and that's what voguing is now made up of. So I'm going to tell you what it is first with the mic, and then I'm going to sit it down and show you. So the first thing is hand performance. Hand performance is about using your hands, your fingers, your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders to tell a story and to basically throw shade and just basically tell what you're trying to do. The next element is catwalk. Catwalk is a very feminine, exaggerated movement where the person can kind of move around the floor. The third element is duck walk. Duck walk is very similar to catwalk, except is very low level. You might have seen it before. The fourth one is floor performance. Floor performance is basically when you're using the floor as a canvas to also continue telling your story. And finally, which you may have seen before, it's called a dip. It is not a death drop. I know people call it a death drop. It is not a death drop. It is called a dip. But the reason that we're doing Legendary with first-person arts is that voguing is nothing but storytelling through your body. And so I'm going to show you those 5 elements. And like I said, just come see us later on for Legendary next month. 1, hand performance.
Hand performance.
Using your hands, telling a story. 2, catwalk.
Catwalk.
Very feminine, exaggerated movements. Just want to get very in there. 3,
Go ahead.
duck walk.
Duck walk.
You've probably seen this before. It's just basically low-level movements. 4, floor performance.
Floor performance.
Moving around, using the floor as a canvas, trying to do everything. And then last but not least, a dip.
The dip. Oh, beautiful.
So, 5 elements of Vogue Femme. We'll see you next month at Legendary.
Absolutely gorgeous. So before you go, I want to try the hand movements because Mama's not doing no duck walk. Because if I get down, I won't get back up. Okay, but okay. So let's show me that. Let's see if I can do the hand movement.
Right,
okay.
So just sit here. Go around. Okay. Okay.
This reminds me of Tai Chi.
There you go. Thank you.
I give you the nails too. Mwah. Thank you. Thank you, Kamar Jewel.
Thank you.
Ooh, how wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So now you've met Kamar Jewel, and I have learned some hand movements to tell my story. So I have two very, very important people. Well, actually, there are three very important people, but with me on this sofa, we can only fit two. So, but I do want to shout out, you know, the folks that make this thing happen. I get the privilege of being in front of the camera. I really do. But what you don't see is what goes on behind the scenes to amplify voices. The people that don't always get acknowledged, that are dedicated to making sure that your stories have a place and that somebody is there to listen. And so this is a great opportunity for you to meet two really, really extraordinary people with first person arts. And I want to bring them on. And one person that you won't see, but I definitely want to give a shout out to, and that's Dr. Neil Barton, who's behind the scenes running this show, making sure I don't say anything that's going to get us in trouble. So ladies and gentlemen, would you give it up for Brandon Zecker and Tanisha Ford? With the hands. So, Brandon, you handle our press outreach for the festival.
Correct.
And Tanisha, well, you do everything else. Now, Tanisha is our Tanisha is our marketing and communications and membership development manager. And Brandon is our press and publicity consultant. So, Brandon and Tanisha, as we're moving towards the festival, I want to ask you this question, because you're in marketing and you're in press. Why do you think the themes we're talking about in the First Person Arts Festival this year are important?
I think that the themes that we're covering in this festival, which is overarching the theme of overcoming, right? The idea of finding yourself through tough times, tribulations, and trials. It's very important, especially today when everything seems to be so difficult. Everything seems to have compounded into a space of well, that's another thing I have to deal with. And so it's kind of uplifting for us to have a festival full of stories of folks who have been through, and we get to see how they got to the other side.
How they got through, that's great. And Brandon, what do you think in terms of the press? You know, because you're talking to the media, and let me tell you something. If the press and the media was never important before, which we all know it was, it's critical in these days and times. How do you think the First Person Arts Festival is important to the press and media at this point?
I think the biggest thing, that we work with a lot in the organization is finding the story within the story. This is an organization of storytellers, and everybody has their own unique story, which kind of ties in to the shared collective experience. And I think that the challenge that I have, and I think where media comes in a lot, is telling the story that's within the story, and really making sure that we're highlighting the depths of what these triumphs and tribulations that people go through, and spread that word out there to let other people know, hey, you're not alone.
I think, one of the things that we learned when we began to think about the news and storytelling in the news is we discovered that there are like these similar issues that cycle through the news almost unendingly, if that's even a word I can use. Issues like gun violence, issues like incidents of violence against vulnerable communities, poverty. It just seemed like there were the same issues over and over again. And it felt like, I remember seeing a sign that somebody had, and it said, I can't believe I'm still protesting for this same stuff. Because it just seems like the same things cycle through and through and through. And so, I began to think, can we really solve the problem? And maybe we can't, but you fight because there's something worth fighting for. And you have to keep fighting because there's something worth fighting for. So with that in mind, I'd like you each to tell me which show during the festival feels like it's in line with your fight.
Oh, she went there.
I did. I went
all the way there.
I went Oprah deep.
Yes, you did. I'm not gonna cry though. The one that has been resonating the most with me has been barracoon, and the connectivity of the history of the last men to have come across on a slave ship, to what's happening here in our country now with black men who are having major issues right now with some law enforcement across the country. There's something about like this is still happening, and there's something about the connectivity between then and now that has gotten me, or has gotten into my solar plexus, and it is the one that I will be front seat and ready for full stop.
So, in case you're not familiar, in 1927, Zora Neale Hurston, and if I have to tell you who Zora Neale Hurston is, I'm not going to do it. Look her up. Zora Neale Hurston met with a gentleman whose American name was Cujo Lewis, and he was the last living survivor of the last slave ship to ever bring enslaved Africans onto these shores. As a side note, the ship was called the Clotilda, and slavery had been abolished when it came over. So they were still bringing enslaved Africans. And Zora Neale Hurston was intrigued by Mr. Lewis and his story. Mr. Lewis talked about things that happened to him and his family in 1902 that resonate today. I'll give you an example. One son was killed by a police officer. One son committed suicide because he could not stand the pressure of racism. Cujo Lewis himself was hurt by a train, and he was represented by a lawyer who stole the settlement from him. When we talk about things cycling through the news, these were experiences he had in 1902. And we really wanted to take a look at how they resonate today. And so, this is an event to celebrate the book that did not find a publisher. It was written in 1927, did not find a publisher until last year. His story has taken far too long to come back into the human consciousness. And so we wanted to do an event to celebrate not just the fact that the story was published, but this man's resilience and sheer will and faith in community that allowed him to endure and also leave a legacy that we can all thrive from. Brandon, which show is your fight in the festival?
We've already seen some of it. Legendary was great last year, and I'm really excited for it this year. As a member of the LGBTQ community, it's just got it touches my soul and tells the story of so many friends, family members, people that are out there that are struggling, minorities, QPOC. That's something that resonates with me, but also something I'm excited for is Hungry Live, as you've talked about before. And what I think is really important about it is you're following lots of Philadelphia chefs and you're hearing their stories
Yes.
of being entrepreneurs, and something that touches, to what I do. Not cooking, because I do that awfully, but like being an entrepreneur myself, to hear the stories of people that are so successful in this industry and seeing what it takes to really get to where they are.
Wonderful. So with that, I want to thank you guys for the work that you do to amplify other people's voices. It is a selfless task. It is a task that requires a lot of long hours and a lot of love. And I want to let you two know that we, Philadelphia, appreciates what you're doing. And Neil in the background that nobody gets to see today, we appreciate you and thank you and love you for all you're doing. Thank you, Brandon, and thank you, Tanisha.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have another little clip because we're going to keep giving you sweet tastes of storytelling from first-person art storytellers. So we're going to cue up a clip from Chris Lundy, first-person art storyteller, Chris Lundy.
DJ Timothy All right. I like that. Oh. No, your hands in there. All right. Okay, so I was a teacher for a couple years right out of college. And I can't prove it, but I had the worst kids in the observable universe. I'm sure of it, I'm telling you. Every time other teachers try to tell me about their teaching nightmare stories, I always ask, did you have Ernest? And if they didn't, obviously, then to me they had it easy. Now, I wasn't very good myself, so I'm sure some of it fell on me. Students were a reflection of their teacher. And, you know, I put it like this. The classes, each classroom had a nickname. So there were like the champions, the winners. My class was known as the hot messes. And we were quite proud of that. What made things worse was I had an old school principal, right? He was big on discipline. Dr. Pinnell, that's all he cared about was class control, discipline. That's all that mattered to him. Test scores were secondary, discipline is all that mattered. And what was coming up was observation day. Now this was the one day a year where the bigwigs, the executives, would come and observe the school, the classrooms, the teachers, the students, and I guess maybe grade it. I'm not exactly sure what they did with it, but it was a big, big day. As a matter of fact, Dr. Pinnell had 3 meetings leading up to it. The first one was control your classroom. The second one was please control your classroom. The third was, if you sons of bitches don't control your class, you'll be filling out COBRA forms a week from now. So it was dead serious. Everybody knew it. And your contract pretty much depended on it. So that day came, and I was a nervous wreck because I knew what I had on my hands. I knew what my class was made of. And I was a nervous wreck. I'm doing things. I'm trying to buy the kids silence. I'm giving them candy, chips, DVDs was the thing back then. Just trying to get us through the day. And it was coming up on lunchtime, and no one had visited my classroom yet. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, all right, I'm trying to think of things to do, because what lunchtime meant was that I would have to walk my herd of wildlings to the cafeteria, and they saw this as an opportunity to just go buck wild, right? They saw their other friends in the hallway, and I see other teachers nodding their head. Absolutely, it was mayhem. Now for me, this walk was the Green Mile. It was, dead man walking. And so, but I had an idea. I'm thinking, you know what? If I can get these kids out maybe a little bit earlier while the executives are observing some other classroom, then boom, maybe I can get to the cafeteria scot-free. So I open up the door to make sure the coast was clear. I look to the left, I look to the right, and what do I see? Dr. Pinnell with the whole executive team standing in the hallway. They weren't going anywhere anytime soon. I was caught. We were caught. My stomach dropped. I'm thinking about my contract. I'm thinking about the unemployment line. And I looked down because the whole day I had Ernest, who was my absolute worst student. I had him right beside me the whole day. You know that saying, keep your enemies closer? Ernest started that. That's how that all got started. And so I see Dr. Pinnell in the hallway with all of the big wigs, and I look down at Ernest like, oh my God. And he looks back at me like, God can't save you now. As soon as you open that door, I'm going full earnest on your ass. And you've been giving me candy all day. So I knew what I was in for. But just then, an idea struck. And I closed the door, turned into the classroom, and I started laughing hysterically. I mean, busting out laughing, as loud as I could be. And this got the attention of my kids, and they're looking like, Mr. Lundy, what's so funny? What are you laughing about? And I'm like, no, you don't want to know. You wouldn't believe me anyway. Don't even worry about it. They're like, come on, tell us, please. Tell us what's so funny. I'm like, all right, well, I was just in the hallway, and I heard Dr. Pinnell say, he asked, who was the best class in the entire school? And I'm like, hey, it's my class. Of course, it's you guys. And he said, no, I don't think so. I think it's Mr. Shepard's class upstairs. And I'm like, no, trust me, my class can get from here all the way to the cafeteria in a single file line without making a single sound. And he was like, impossible. So I bust out laughing, and well, that's when you guys saw me. So you ready to go to lunch, guys? They took the bait. They start lining up quietly, getting in line. I mean, a perfect little line. But I still had to account for the Antichrist, Ernest. So I kneel down with him. I get eye level. You know how you do. You know, I'm sure everyone who has kids, you get that eye level down to make sure they know exactly. You know, you're serious with them. And I go, Ernest, I need your help. I need you because you're the only one that can do this, because you're the only one who knows karate. And he pauses and he ponders and then he goes, yeah, it's true. And I'm like, Ernest, I need you to lead this line. I need you to get them from here to the cafeteria as quickly and as quietly as possible, and only you could do it. The look in this kid's face, I'm telling you, he was determined. He immediately walked to the front of the line, shoved some kid out of the way, and took his rightful spot as the line leader. So the stage was set. I take a deep breath, I open the door, and I let them go. So they're walking down the hall, and when I tell you guys, you've never seen a line this straight, this perfect. I mean, even their posture, chest out, chins up high, you could balance books on their head. Now, they wouldn't read these books, but they damn sure could balance them on their heads. And it was so quiet. They walked past Dr. Pennell, walked past the executives, and then I'm following behind them. I get to Dr. Pennell, he shows me a little wink. I give him one of these numbers, keep on going. Now we get to the cafeteria and it was perfect. Don't get me wrong, as soon as we got there, everything went to shit. I mean, kids started fighting, Ernest vanished. I still don't know where he ran off to. But the deed was already done and we had done it. And I was proud of him, to be honest with you. So later that year, at review time, performance review time, the annual merit increase that year, faculty-wide, was 2.3%. On my performance, it had discipline and class control as the only two things that were there. But my merit increase was 2.9. So for those of you who do have a drink, please raise it. To Ernest. Thank you.
This is what you're looking for. This is what you want. If you see this anywhere in Philadelphia, grab two. Not one, but two. One for yourself and one for a friend. This is the 17th Annual First Person Arts Brochure. And inside you will see a listing of all the marvelous performances that will enliven Philadelphia and unleash the power of voice. We were talking about our favorite shows. So I'll give you a question. What does a man who spent 6 years in prison only to get out and get a 6-figure job, what happens to turn him into an activist and a Comedy Central personality? You can ask Thelonious Monk yourself. Thelonious will have his own performance at the First Person Arts Festival. Also, we'll be having an event called Palante, unique, compelling stories about the Latinx experience in Philadelphia and this country. Another very favorite performance that we have, and we have a special guest for you tonight, is Nick Cupsey, comedian, author, and premiering his one-man show once in a lifetime at the First Person Arts Festival about a man navigating divorce in an age of social media. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Cupsey.
Hi, everybody. So, I'm in my car and I need cheese. I need cheese. And I'm sitting in my gunmetal silver Honda CR-V, furiously smoking cigarettes outside of a Trader Joe's while listening to Wu-Tang, confusing everyone in the parking lot. But I need this cheese. I need to go in to this Trader Joe's. I promised a friend that I would get this cheese for a party I was going to. It was a Friday night, beautiful Friday night, beautiful fall Friday night, like the kind we have right now, where the air is just absolutely crisp and the leaves are just starting to turn color and they're beginning to fall. And I'm trying my hardest to will myself to go into this Trader Joe's to get a block of cheese. Just one block of cheese. That's all I needed was one block of cheese. One block of cheese. A very specific cheese. It was English cheddar with caramelized onions. But the problem was I couldn't will myself out of my car. You see, this was the first time I was coming to this Trader Joe's after my divorce. I used to go there every Friday with my ex-wife. She would get done work. I would walk up to the car. I'd meet her, and we'd drive, and we'd go food shopping. That was our Friday night. Every Friday night. So I'm standing there, and I'm like, all right, I have to get this cheese. I have this party. I have to go. I look good. I'm feeling confident. I started to lose a little weight. I was wearing a tight T-shirt. I was handsome. So I was like, I'm going to go into this Trader Joe's, and I'm going to get the cheese. But first, I need a plan. So I take a napkin and a pen, and I diagram the Trader Joe's from memory, having gone there every Friday night for 4 years of marriage. And I said, okay, if I go in, the doors slide, and it's a hard right past the arugula and all the things that your doctor tells you to eat that I don't. And I know the cheese is at the end of that line. All I need to do is to get in and bang a hard right, and I know exactly where the cheese is, and I can get it. And I can get out of there. And I don't have to be in that store any longer. So I will myself out of my car. I hit the key fob, it locks, and I walk up the ramp towards this Trader Joe's that I've gone to a billion times, and I get through the sliding doors, and I just take off. Now, I start to run. Now, it's not a big Trader Joe's, so people are looking at me like, why is this tiny man running? So I get there, and I'm looking, and the cheese isn't there. It's not there, which means that I have to ask an associate for the cheese. And I don't want to be in this store any longer than I already have been. And then I talk to an associate. He says, yeah, they know me by name because I was there every Friday night. And they said, where have you been? We haven't seen you in about 2 months. I said, oh, I've just been busy. I said, all right, Nick, well, let me go get the cheese from the back. So there I am, hoping that this would be a smash and grab operation and I could get out. But no, I'm stuck. I've got to wait. I got to wait for this cheese. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, if I got to wait for the cheese, then let me just hide by the chips. I need to hide by the chips. I don't want anybody to see me. Let me hide by the chips. So I'm standing there, and I'm looking at the chips, and I'm pretending that I care about habanero salsa and all sorts of other vegetable sticks. Again, something I don't eat. When I hear a voice, a very familiar voice, the kind of voice that used to yell at me from the kitchen, the kind of voice that would give me grief for spending $6.58 on my credit card. It was a familiar voice, and at this time, it wasn't one that brought me comfort, it brought me terror. So every Friday night, I would go to this Trader Joe's with my ex-wife, and this is the first time I've walked in this Trader Joe's without her. Never gone in before without her. And she's in the next aisle over, and I can hear her, and she's talking, and we haven't seen each other in months. I moved my things out, black trash bags. It was very much like how the Baltimore Colts left in the middle of the night. And I start to sweat, and I can feel that fight or flight response kick in. And at this point, I've grabbed items that I had no intention to buy just so people wouldn't look at me as I stood there like this against the chip aisle. And I heard her, and I know her voice. It's a very distinct voice, a very Italian West Philly voice, you know? Little bit of attitude with just a tiny bit of like comfort to it. And I did what any normal adult would do in this situation. I threw everything and ran. I ran down this Trader Joe's has a basement, and I know that there's an exit. So I threw everything. I ran past the aisle she was at, down the steps, through all this stock to this back door. I felt like I was like running a marathon, and that door was going to be like the ribbon. Like I was going to get out. And I burst through that door, and there was some sort of noise that went on. I must have hit some sort of emergency alarm. I didn't care. And I just kept running down State Street, running like Forrest Gump. I just kept running and running and running until you couldn't go any farther, until I had reached where State Street and Baltimore Pike met. It's about 1.5 miles. And I couldn't breathe, and I stopped, and I was on my knees, and I was coughing, and the coughing turned to puking, and the puking turned to crying, because I wasn't ready or able to run into my ex-wife yet. It was too soon. It was too much. And then while I was laying there and as passerbys are driving by thinking, that guy had a good happy hour. And I'm crying and I'm thinking about all the terrible things that happened in my marriage and why I'm here and why I don't live in this neighborhood anymore. And then it dawned on me, I didn't have to go to this Trader Joe's because there was one 2 blocks from my new house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome.
I think the worst thing in the world that can happen is to run into an ex.
Oh, it's the worst.
Unless, of course, you are 150 times better, than you were when you were with
Jamie, I look so much better now. I'd love to run into her today. I mean, I look amazing. It would really make me happy. But no, it's a very difficult thing, especially when you've lived with someone. We were together for 7 years. We lived together for 4. So, and it was a tumultuous time in both of our lives. And it wasn't necessarily the happiest, I think, for either one of us. So running into her was very much like, it was like being reintroduced to a nightmare. And I needed to get that fight or flight response. I've felt it before, but in that case, it was something else.
I think that a lot of people can identify with your story, Nick, and I think that's one of the great things about First Person Arts. I've never been married or divorced.
Lucky.
But I can empathize with you because I do have an ex or 2 or 7 or 10. 25. Anyway, I have exes, and some of them, I would not want to see again. And you think about it in your mind. I don't know about anybody else, but like I run these scenarios in my mind. If I were to run into him at such and such, this is what I would say. But it's never been put to the test because I think my reaction would have been like yours, to bolt.
I definitely had those scenarios where I said to myself, I know what I'm going to say. I have every point. It's like laid out. It's like a categorical syllogism. I'm going to bury her. And then all I did was cowardly run through the back door of a Trader Joe's.
And cry.
And cry and throw up. Because I was out of shape at the time. But everybody can relate. Everybody can go through a breakup, especially in the digital age, because now at any moment you can just look someone up. You can, or have someone send you a screenshot of them on vacation with their new boyfriend.
Which is terrible. Those things shouldn't be allowed on Facebook.
I think it's emotional terrorism is what I really think it is.
Absolutely. Well, we have had a fantastic hour here at PhillyCAM. It's almost like the time went by so quickly. There's never enough time for us to be together. But we want to just really, really say thank you, let you know that we love you and we appreciate you. I want to give a special thanks to Kamar Jewell, Nikki DeCara, and of course Nick Cupsey, who were here with us live, to Namisha and Chris Lundy, who shared their stories with us via our video clips, the First Person Arts team, Tanisha Ford, Brandon Zecker, Dr. Neal, people that aren't with us, Rebecca Reynolds, and the PhillyCAM team. Y'all rock and roll. Thank you and good night.